Have you ever wondered how movies look like people are driving and then you see things and you're like, oh, they're not actually driving? Sometimes you'll see them on a green screen and it won't be done to the most believable effect, so you can kind of point it out, but not always. Sometimes, especially for driving at night, I find is when this technique works best. Before that, the way most often, the best way that people film driving sequences during the day, during the night, whatever, is they will put the car on what's called a process trailer. They secure it, and there's a giant truck that tows the trailer, that tows the car, and there's an entire film crew on that process trailer. I've done this. I've been a part of productions that are doing this. And you're on there and you circle around the street. The police lock up the street so there's no like interference with traffic or anything like that, and you just go around and around and around until you have the shot. You change directions, change people, change scene, whatever, and carry on. You can do this during the day. You can do this during the night. But what if you don't have money, you don't have time to do it, you're over budget, you have no budget, etc. This is what we call the poor man's process, or the poor man's process trailer. This was something I was turned on to years and years and years ago that I then wanted to recreate. I am a cinematographer, director of photography. I wanted to challenge myself to do a short film that was mostly taking place in a car at night. So I did, partially because I just like that night driving aesthetic, and I wanted to create a film that kind of encapsulated that. Thus, there was a lot of driving at night, but not actually, because what you do, you can do this during the day, you can do this during the night. During the day, you probably want a green screen. During the night, you can get away with what I did, but I find it works better at night. And I've seen this also done on the different productions that I've worked on, high budget TV shows for Netflix and stuff like that. It's done at a little bit of a higher level, a little less thrown together, but I did this on a short film with basically no budget whatsoever. So what you do is you get your car, and it's stationary, it's not moving. You have it in a parking lot, whatever. You get a projector screen and you get footage of like street lights and the road going by. Basically, if you pointed your camera out a window, you would get that shot, and then whatever angle it is, you would just do it to match. So if your profile to somebody here would be the camera pointing out a window, getting stuff going by. But if you're, say, looking at somebody, they're driving from behind, you would have them driving into it. So it would be like if you had your camera on the dash, same as if you get the person's front of their face, you would have stuff going behind. So it looks like you're going in the direction that you're supposed to be going in on screen, right? So that's not all of it though. You don't just put a projector screen behind somebody, because then it just looks weird and it doesn't feel authentic. So how do you make it feel good? How do you make it feel authentic? Because I've shown people some of this footage and they're like, oh yeah, like you just shot like this. No, there was no movement, there was no driving, there was nothing. This is how it's done. So for this, we had the car stationary, we had the projector, and we switched it based on every single shot that we were doing. And I was primarily shooting from outside the car. That's what it's called. It's called a car. Now, I was on a slider going back and forth and forward and out to kind of add a bit of movement and dynamicism to the shots. But the main thing that brought it all together was the lighting. First, I started with a little ambient light in the car. This was like a little Aperture MC. I put a teal gel on there just because I like that teal kind of ambience. So that lit up the entirety of the car itself, right? It's a very dim light, but there is still detail there if what looks like street lights aren't hitting them at that moment. I'm getting there. Then, at the front of the car, I have a key light that's very soft. Like a softbox that's very dim, essentially. So very, very soft, dim light, just giving a little bit more detail, as if, you know, you're getting just ambience of street lights and stuff. Then, for each person in the car, each position, I have a couple spot lamps, essentially, from above. Then I have a couple people from grip and electric. Basically the lighting team and the grip team are people that put up lights and put stuff in front of lights and move around, that kind of stuff. So I had them spinning the lights so it would look like street lights are going by. So you get the effect of that golden glow passing by, very incandescent light. It stands out as well when you're using the teal than if you were using like a pure white light. It doesn't, that tungsten doesn't stand out as much. So that worked out well. Then, because we're not done, then I had a flashlight. You could use like a regular LED light, but I just had like a literal flashlight at the front of the car that we would spin every so often, because when it would go by, it would look like the headlights of another car going by, because this was a white light. So now you have this teal ambience that's really cool, but then you have the white light, so you go, oh, car headlights. Then the orange goes by, oh, street lights. Then, because we're not done, the one thing that pulls it all together is there is movement, not just from the slider, but the car itself is kind of moving. You have a grip on the back of it, just shaking the car up and down. Because what that does is it gives the simulation that you're in the car with them. It gives this feeling that you're actually being driven, that sells the whole thing, because if it's all static, it's so much less believable. It doesn't work. But with this, that's what pulls it all together. I wish I had behind the scenes footage of this. I shot this short before I really started diving into content creation, so I don't really have some behind the scenes anything from this, but I'll kind of try to draw out the lighting setup that we had here. And all in all, it actually turned out really well for a driving sequence. I would obviously do things a little bit differently now, but ultimately I'm really happy with how the result turned out, and it still looks great. And it wasn't shot on the best camera or anything either. It was essentially shot on like what I'm shooting on now for this. But it worked, and it worked well. And if you're looking to film a cinematic night sequence that doesn't involve people actually driving, you'd rather your actors focus on the performance as opposed to the actual where they are in the road. If you want a safer way to do that, this is how it's done. There you go. If you're a filmmaker, if you're a cinematographer, and you're looking for a way to make driving at night look good, this is how I did it on no budget whatsoever. So I hope this inspires you to maybe do something similar. If you enjoyed this video and got some value out of it, consider subscribing. As always, remember to work hard, rest often, and as always, my friends, I'll see you on the next one.